Hi everyone, I'm Natalia. Welcome to my channel. Today I wanted to share with you books that I have recently read, as well as books that are currently on my reading list that I just picked up for months ahead. It's always interests me when I see other YouTubers share the books they had been reading, because I am a big book nerd. If I actually were to put my passions in order, I would say books would be the first, tarot would be a second passion of mine. I'm an incredibly voracious reader. Those who follow me on Instagram knows that about me and tend to follow when I put in my Instagram stories a recent book I read and what my thoughts are on it. And I love engaging with all of you that way because I think books are amazing. If there's something that has fundamentally changed the way I think and the way I perceive the world and relationship to myself, it definitely would be books first, and then my experiences second. It's actually the books that have changed so much about the ways that I relate and the ways that I see and understand the world. They have been very instrumental to me. So it's always a pleasure for me to share. And I'd be very curious to know if any of these books are something that you have read, if any of them interest you. And hopefully this engagement in dialogue about books with all of you is also going to be something interesting. Like I said, I love it when I see YouTubers sharing the books. It's right there up my alley. David and I both, my husband David and I both, next month it's going to be 17 years that we have been together. It's so wonderful. It's just, anyways, I'm like in a bliss with this man. But I'm very lucky because he is also a voracious reader. David is an architect, and he's an interesting architect because he really should be a professor. He reads a lot of architectural, I would say, philosophy. He'll read about how our bodies interact with space, how we interact with spatial objects. He'll read a lot of even things such as hermeneutics and architecture. So he'll read really fascinating books, and then he'll share with me synopsis of what he reads, and it makes up for very interesting and engaging conversation. And he reads a ton of fiction. I used to read a lot of fiction. I started off with reading a lot of fiction, and then I kind of went off into a lot of nonfiction. To this day, 99% is nonfiction, and 1% once in a while that fiction is going to, the fiction is going to sneak in, but usually for me, it's nonfiction. I'm really big on that, but David will read a lot of fiction, and he'll share them with me. And so it makes a very interesting marriage. People always ask me, how do I manage to read so much? And you know what the truth is? I'm very privileged. I have no kids, and I have time. I'm fortunate to work part-time, and I have time. So giving that, it enables me a lot of opportunity to create content, this channel, my other channel, read a lot, do a lot of other things that I love doing. And yeah, I guess if you want to read a lot, don't have children, and marry somebody who likes to read too. I know it's a tall order, but really for a lot of you who are parents out there, I know it takes up tons of your time. Both of my sisters have kids, and I'm so selfish with my time, to be honest. I can't even imagine. So having said that, let me share with you what I read recently that I really enjoyed. I have been, as if any of you have been watching Engaged, it's not Engaged, it is exploring perspective, I believe I called it, the series where I interview individuals that I'm really interested in talking to. And you may have seen, perhaps if that interests you, the first interview I done with Camila Ellis. So I have recently read, well, let me do this one first. I have read her recent 2 new books. Recently I read this one, Under Malice. This is the fine print limited edition that she does. I'm so horrible. Do you guys see this? When I read books, I do a lot of book bending, and when I do a lot of book bendings, they're all drives David nuts. Tell me if you do this. I do this. I am a book. All my books have broken spines. See how it is? It's all messed up now. David, it drives him insane. He reads books in a perfect order. His spines are just very precise and perfect. And I'm so emotionally sadistic. I do this on purpose in front of him because I know it drives my husband nuts. But so this is Under Malice. This is basically Camila is writing about the 72nd demon in Goetia. And it's a very interesting read, especially if you're interested in occult, especially if you're fascinated or interested in Goetia, especially if you're interested in any kind of demon demon work. This is a wonderful read. What I really liked the most about it, apart from her also going into the history of Malice and her working with it, what I enjoyed the most is her own personal ad hoc, personalized approach in working with Malice. Really liked it so much because I'm not somebody who tends to follow rituals. I'm not somebody who tends to follow a lot of rules. So I really liked her perspective and her approach on things. I also very much loved her discussion about language and the ways the language and description is written of what Malice actually does and delivers, and how we can take that and extrapolate and apply to today's modern times. So this is also available in regular paperback. If you're interested, I think this is a wonderful, wonderful read. I really enjoyed it. I think I read it in like 2 days. I really enjoyed it. Another one of her latest books is Cross. Now, this is a small book. She has started, sorry, I'm looking at my nails because I just painted them and I have a feeling I'm going to scuff them up. She just started a series called, I believe I think she called them Read Like a Devil Threats. I'm not sure. I may be completely wrong. The first one in the series was, it's called Threats. And it's reading 3 cards and then editing cards and reading it as 6 cards or more cards. And that was really interesting read, but I really loved this. I'll tell you why. This is called Cross. In this book specifically, what she does is she outlines, I believe, 4 different ways of doing a reading. So basically, this is a spread book, right? You know, one of those books you get where it tells you spread, but this is so much better than that. And if you're like me, that sometimes wants to have a little bit more interesting type of spread when you're reading the tarot, I sometimes don't. I have one of those, I don't remember who published it, one of the popular writers, perhaps maybe Mary Greer or somebody like that, the really big name in a tarot writing. I have one of the compilations of all types of spreads, but it's so much. It's overwhelming. For me, it's too much. I love this because, again, there's only 4 types of crosses and they each will dive into situation very differently. I especially liked the practical application of this book because not only she tells you how to do particular spread, but then she goes over through the example, sharing with you her examples of her doing reading using this particular cross, which was very instrumental. I loved the French, it's called French Passion, French cross, the first cross. It is a cross of 5 cards, and it is the first card is your situation, the next card is what's opposing your situation, the above card is advice, below a card is outcome, and you're using majors only. And then you add up all of the majors, and then with whatever numbers they add up to, that's going to be card in the middle, which is a synthesis of overall reading. And I done that for myself. I loved it. Of course, as with me, when I read for myself, I'm always stupefied. I look at it and it's so hard for me to really read for myself because, like I said, I'm just like, I get it, but I still don't know what the answer is. Always blockages when I read for myself predictively. That is, psychologically, I have no problem, but predictively. But highly recommend. Really, really good. Very, especially if you just want to book for a few ways to do readings that are very specific and to the point. The other books that I read was, this is by Rick Rubin, The Creative Act. It's Creative Act, A Way of Being. So Rick Rubin, if you don't know him, he is a musical producer that worked with some of the amazing names in the industry. I am very musically, I have musically arrested development, I call it, because when it comes to music, for me, it's very easy. Nina Simone, Leonard Cohen, and Jeff Buckley doing renditions of Nina Simone and Leonard Cohen. My buck stops there with those 3 musicians. And of course, occasionally Bob Dylan. So for me, when I think about the people that he worked with, I draw a blank because they're all modern creatives. But Rick Rubin is a fascinating producer. And if you ever just look him up on YouTube and see any of the interviews he's done, he's a really interesting way of being, period, as a person. He has a very Zen master, very Buddhist type of presence. This book is so beautiful. if you are an artist, especially if you are an artist, and I know that for all artists, so to say, because everything is a creative act, but if you're specifically an artist who actually creates whatever it is, you're a painter, you're a writer, you are a musician, this book is so just phenomenal. If you're not an artist, this book is still phenomenal, because again, everything we do is a creative act. We do creative constantly. We're creative, especially with our imagination, by making our imagination come true. So this was, let me know if anybody read this. It was lovely. I read it before I would go to sleep, and I would read it as if I'm kind of meditating, if you will, sitting in a reverie of his voice. This book by Alejandro Jadorovsky, I should be able to pronounce his name because he from Russian descent, so it's Alexander Jadorovsky, Psychomagic. I had this book on my shelf for a long time. I'm familiar with Alejandro's Marseille book, and I picked it up recently, and I'm halfway through this book, and I can't put this book down. I don't know why it never occurred to me to read it before, but this book, the way, at least where I'm at, and I'm halfway through, the way it's structured, at least halfway again, is he's being interviewed by a writer, and there's question and dialogue engagement going back and forth. And in the beginning, Alejandro explains his upbringing in Chile, and he explains his relationship to art, and especially poetry, and to, again, create a creative act, and the way of being in the world and of the world, and his relationship, how everything really is a stage, everything really is a performance, everything is a theater, and it's really beautiful. And what he does in terms of psychomagic, when he works with individuals in terms of bringing their unconsciousness and then giving them conscious task, actionable task to then come to resolution, is fascinating. Not only is it fascinating, I realized reading this book that this is exactly what I'm actually doing with a lot of my clients in psychology and psychotherapy, because, at least not to the extent that he's very creative to the extent he does it. I'm not as creative to that extent, but to the extent that I make sure that I give them an actionable plan, not in the form of homework, but for example, if a patient of mine has a hard challenges in valuing herself and really undervalues herself, I will say, I want you to buy yourself flowers this week. And I want you to see how that makes you feel. So I will give them a task of getting something for themselves, something as small as flowers, in order to bring that part that needs to be valued to the forefront. And there's a lot that I agree in terms of Alejandro's thought process on psychotherapy, because I am not a believer in talk psychotherapy. I think that talk psychotherapy doesn't get us anywhere. We're sitting there, and even if we mentalize and make sense of why we are the way we are, that understanding, in my experience, is never enough. What really needs to happen is, once you have that aha moment, you need to have an actionable thing then to actually integrate it. And it's only integration happens when you are doing that sort of things versus just thinking about them. So highly recommend. I'm yet to finish it, halfway through, but really enjoying it. I'm also started reading this one. This is by Jake Stratton Kent. I don't know why I can never remember his full name. Jake Stratton Kent. It's Encyclopedia Goetia Volume 1, called True Grimoire. Look at this. Beautiful, beautiful. This is paperback from Scarlet Imprint. And I got this one, and then I got 4 more volumes following this one, also by Jake Stratton Kent. This is interesting to me because I'm getting, if you've seen my interview with Lone Milo Ducat, you have seen that I have a fresh interest in Goetia because it parallels so much what we do in psychotherapy. It's fascinating to me. So I have an interest in it, and I started reading this. I am not far ahead at all, so I can't really comment. Perhaps when I'll do the second video towards the end of the month or sometime beginning next month, I will share with you more thoughts on this book. I'm really hoping it's going to be digestible. I'm really hoping that it's going to be written in a style where I can understand and process, because some of the books, sometimes from Scarlet Imprint, for me, are too heady. For me, I'm not there yet because my knowledge of occult, it's pretty basic. It's pretty limited, I would say, and it's not as in-depth. So I'm really looking forward to this. If any of you read it and know if this is digestible, please let me know. I know one person who is also reading it. Okay, so which books, apart from finishing Jadorovsky and The True Grimoire, there's two books that I picked up today, which is a little bit odd for me to pick up this type of books, because nonfiction is usually some kind of book on gender theory, conceptualizing gender. I make sure I read at least one book on gender a month, and then I will gravitate toward occultish type of interesting stuff. But today I went to here in Los Angeles, I went to an independent bookstore called Skylight Books to get a journal for myself, and I was also like so giddy because I saw my book on new terms that I wrote for transgender and non-binary community. I saw this book on their bookshelf, and I was one of those individuals who was taking pictures of to document, hey, my book made it to the bookstore. It was really, it was a moment. Let's just say it was a moment. And while I was perusing their bookstore, and they're very independent bookstore, and they carry very interesting titles, I saw what is my favorite thing for the bookstores to do is when they have a shelf that the title bestsellers or recommended, or my even most favorite from Powell's bookstore, because I'm native to Portland, where they say staff picks. So that's my favorite. Show me staff picks and let me peruse that bookshelf, and I'm definitely going to find something. So while I was there, I picked up this one. I don't know if anybody has read this. It's called Biography of Acts. I have a feeling this is fiction, nonfiction combined together. I think it's marketed as a fiction, but I believe it's sprinkled a lot of biographical nonfiction. It just gives me that feeling. And I was lucky because I was picking it off the bookshelf, and a store employee was taking all of those books off the bookshelf. And I looked over at her and she said, the officer is here and she's signing them. You want yours signed now, since you're playing the white? And I said, sure. Which is kind of odd for me. I don't usually really care much for books to be signed, but I thought, okay, I guess now I'm really committed to this book. And then I went where the officer was, and there was this lovely woman, and I said, I'd like to buy this book. And she said, yeah, you want me to address it to you? I said, yes, my name is Natalia. And she looked up at me and she goes, I love your haircut. And I said, thank you. And then she wrote in here, and we chatted a little bit, basic stuff. I said, is this your first book? She said, no, it's my 5th book. And I said, well, I'm really looking forward to read it. It looks really interesting. And she said, well, I hope you enjoy it. I walked away, and then I got in the car and I looked at what she signed, and it's so lovely. To Natalia, who has wonderful style. This is, if you're going to sign it, make it personal. This is a beautiful way to sign a book. So I'm looking forward to read this. This looks really interesting. If any of you have read it, let me know. And then I picked up, this is nonfiction. Now, this is very up my alley, because it was again on the bookshelf, and this just looked really yummy. The cover got me, which makes me think maybe I should redo my On New Terms cover to have some picture, but this really got me. It's called Monsters, Offense Dilemma. And at first I thought, ooh, maybe this is something has to do with a cult. Is this a pig's head? No, it's not a pig's head. It's a bull's head, and it has nothing to do with a cult. But this is a beautiful book because it is my understanding is that it focuses on the dilemma we have as fans toward individuals who create art. Picasso, Woody Allen, Roman Polanski, people of such nature who also had acts which are, whether proven or not proven, are ethically crossing the line. Depends how you look at it. And how do we look at those art forms in the midst of our today's cancel culture? How are we able to appreciate, can we appreciate an art versus colluding that with what she calls monster, a little bit intense, I think, in terms of language use, but her book. So how do we look at them? And it always fascinated me because I love Zostack. You all know Zostack is one of my favorite tarot decks. And I've seen a lot of people talk about the deck online and really enmeshing the deck with Aleister Crowley and really calling out Crowley as being sexist. I guarantee you, so was Wade as well, who wasn't back then. I mean, look at the history. Calling him also, you name, homophobic. There's just all kind of verbiage assigned to him. And I think that, first of all, there's so much information that people tend to extrapolate from hearsay versus really diving deep into understanding history and understanding why people behaved the way they did, but also judging solely on the behavior versus on a byproduct that the person was able to create. And Crowley, disagree with me, Crowley was not, we all know he was not the most amazing man. We all know he was, could be pretty terrible person. But I would say that it's pretty hard to dispute the fact that he was a genius and probably one of the best magicians of his time. I think that's pretty difficult to dispute. And people say we should really call Zostack Lady Frida Harry's deck. And the reality is that no. It's not like the Rider-Waite-Smith deck where it really was Pixie who created it. This one is different. This was collaboration, and there's a deep history behind their collaboration. They really went back and forth, and she really understood what he was trying to communicate, and he really understood her conception of art. This was a beautiful dance between two. So we should really call it Crowley / Harry's deck versus just Harry's deck. But anyway, so it's always fascinated me, how do we, because sometimes I fall into that dilemma with other individuals where they're in the media, they get into their scandalous acts, but yet I'm a fan of their work. So how do we, either way to separate? I love Bukowski. Bukowski was a sexist pig. I say that unapologetically because it is. If you read Bukowski, you will know the guy is a sexist pig. But I love his writing. And so for me, it's not a problem because I'm able to see the context and I'm able to see even him projecting himself into his writing, and I'm able to separate that versus take it personally as an attack on myself or an attack on my femininity or on my womanhood. So this will be interesting. Let me know if any read it. I showed David what I got, and my husband, apparently being a dork, even dorkier than I am on books, he said, "Oh, monsters! I heard that it's got really interesting acclaimed reviews." Okay, well, we'll have to see. So that's what I'm reading. That's what's on my list. I have more books coming tomorrow, but I'll share that with you, and in terms of what I'm working on and why those books are coming sometime after I finish with this. So let me know if you had these books, if you read them, share in the comments below. What are you reading? I always laugh, again, like I said, I think in tarot community and other things that everybody has in common is the amount of books people read, just gravitating towards reading styles. So having said that, I hope you all have a great day. Bye.